Hey, this is a short story called Thanks Awfully. We lived above a Thai place, and smells of sesame oil and duck fat were thick in the carpet. The walls were sticky with rising grease. Bringing the dog was the first of many errors. He took to a corner of the kitchen that was now a permanent shade of stain. He developed a condition where the part of him that would control his hunger, that would let him know when he was done, was broke or exhausted, and he hunkered in isolation, chewing and chewing whatever he could manage. I wore earplugs to compensate. His tongue, heavy with sores, wore the linoleum down to the planks. Colin had a position seating endowed co-eds at a wine bar up the avenue. He'd come home pressed as if he'd never left, rich with purpled teeth, and add a handful of change to the spill on the top of the dresser. He was good to coax my belt, a running shoe, small take-out bags, any number of pencils and pens, from Buck's maw. The city had softened me. I engaged daily in my research, which increased my waist size, but hesitated to show me anything useful, or prove I was more than simply spoiled by my inheritance. Buck took ill from eating the tamarind-glossed carpet tacks of the common room, and expired before the end of our first year. It was a mercy we took as a sign, and we resigned to bury him back home in the country. Mother languished in the den. Colin introduced himself and eased her to her feet, and she mumbled a thanks awfully. The corn was starved and limp on their stalks. Past the parched lake and through the pixels of dust I could make out Sullivan getting the Holsteins rigid for stud. 2 mares were left to Mother. The horses' fly masks gave them a sexuality Colin couldn't deny, and he spent the afternoon extending his hands loaded with apples. The foaling mare laid on the grass and delivered a heap. I dug a sallow trench, and Colin retched into the raspberry bush. 2 bodies were committed to what was left of the earth. Inside, Mother attempted a roast. Her lumbering had rutted the floor in grooves. On each plate, an adumbration of another meal. My sister returned from the frosty mug and complained of someone's advances, and I bristled. Yes, they're still around, she said, and who's this? Colin purred. Her breast bloomed above her restricting tank. In the attic, the eaves were rank with the expectorations of bats. Colin tried to make the most of the oil lamp dark, and taking the ball gag from my mouth, I listened to the house heave. I refused his affection. He stood at the window that overlooked the barn. A light inside broadcast the shadow of a crossbeam across that distance. His erection above the sill indicated the subject in a way I could not endure. The bells of Sullivan's bulls clamored.